I do have to Saturn return, anyways. So it's counting now.
Okay.
We are going live. And do you want to do the welcome to everybody?
Yeah, I can do the welcome. That's fine.
Okay, great.
All right. And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Blast from the Past. My name is Latricia, and you are also here with our fearless leader, Jay. Say hello, Jay.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here with you. An hour late, but never too late.
Excellent. We had a little bit of Mercury shenanigans happening, but we are here and we are ready to go. And we are going to talk today about, we're going to finish up our talk on Saturn and Saturn cycles, and we're going to get a little bit into crisis management using astrology. Is that right, Jay?
That absolutely is right. And we're going to look at also a little bit about what's going on in the world at the moment, particularly the US as the world and the government shutdown. Mind you, government is also Saturn related, right? So,
Yep.
how the structures work, the government structures work, and everything. So, maybe the US is having its Saturn moment, and we will be looking at that. And you will be surprised. We do have a Saturn moment going on with the United States Sibley chart.
Yes. And before we get into all of that, we just want to remind you that this and all of our weekly podcasts are brought to you by Astro Magistus. So don't forget to check out our website at astromagistus.com, and you can see that in the comment link here on our screen. We have a wide variety of readings that you can get from us. If you want a natal reading, if you want a counseling reading, especially during, our current times because the world is on fire and we all could use a little bit of guidance. We also have electional chart readings. We have synastry. So if you and your boyfriend are going at it and you might be having your own personal crisis or a personal crisis with somebody else, say a parent, for example, just like we talked about last week of Joan and Christina Crawford, you can reach out to us at astromagistus.com and we will help guide you via the stars.
Exactly. And you will see, actually, when you take a look at our different astrologers, and we do have different talk shows on the different weekdays, I definitely invite you to take a look at all of all of those shows. You will find that we all have a different style, different personality, and find the one that you feel most comfortable with and go with them. But we are all definitely qualified to help in any situation that you might be confronted with, unless, of course, it's a complete psychological breakdown or medical emergency. These kinds of things are better taken care of by the professionals, licensed doctors, physicians, psychologists, and so on. But we can definitely help with the decision-making process and putting, let's say, some understanding about what's going on into your life. So I would
Excellent.
say, I would say that's that. And what do we want to start with? Would we want to
So
start where we pick?
we gotta pick up where we left off with Joan and
Exactly.
Christina.
Yes. Yes.
So if you guys remember, if for anybody who has watched our video last week or our recording last week, you know that we talked about Saturn and how it appears in your life cycle. If you're going through a Saturn opposition versus a Saturn return, and a good many of us are familiar with what it feels like to go through your Saturn return. But what happens when your planetary alignment is conflicting with someone else's planetary alignment? So our 90s talk show special guests, had they been in person with us, were Joan and Christina Crawford, who are very known for their relationship, especially through the book and movie Mommy Dearest. So if you haven't seen those, you should definitely check it out or read the book. And so some of the things we talked about was when Joan adopted Christina, she was going through her first Saturn return. And then once Christina started going into her Saturn opposition and coinciding with Joan's Saturn return and opposition, how that kind of how that looked in via their birth charts. And now we're going to try to finish that up because we know had they been in a show, they probably would have been swinging on each other by now. So would that have been resolved as they got further along in their Saturn cycles? What happens when Christina reaches her first Saturn return versus Joan, who should be in her second Saturn return? What do you think would happen, Jay?
Well, I mean, you always would hope that, with added years to your life, you learn how to handle yourself better, learn how to handle um, adverse situations that are thrown at you in a different style, more. And it's probably what Saturn helps doing, because it is, saying, you need to look at this, you need to learn how to handle it. You cannot throw a tantrum at it. It's not going to go away by doing that. You need to be practical. Again, the Saturn situation, you have to be practical about things,
Mm-hmm.
and figure out, okay, what is it that's going on here? Why do we have this situation? Have we lived outside of, for example, I mean, living outside of your means? We're coming back to the United States and the Simply chart in a moment, or like, well, a little bit more than a moment, but today. um, is the government, is the country living outside of its means with what it's doing? Not looking at it from the perspective of like, would it be nice to have it, but really in the situation of like, can I continue like this without getting myself into a worse situation? And sometimes, or actually, if you are on the right track, usually Saturn moments are not that um, problematic, if I would want to call it that,
If you're on the
because
right track.
if you're on the right track, because you kind of like doing what Master Saturn wants from you. Now, if you're going down the wrong alley, though, then you will meet the disciplinarian that says, well, sorry, this is not how you can continue, or it will break you in a way. Or it will break the bank in a way, depending on the situation in which you face this beautiful planet. But I also would like to point out, because as you said already, it's always this like gloom and doom, and it actually is not. And for those people that are actually applying themselves to their life, and again, we as astrologers help people understand what it is that they're about, and what they can do to make their life a success and all that. And then you're applying, like, you go to school, you're applying yourself to some, I don't know, some courses, get licensed in something, follow your path and all that. And usually when you do that, when you add this diligence, again, it's steady application of something. You're being diligent. You're putting the nose to the grindstone and just get it done. And you have your license and everything else. Then you also get your reward from Saturn. That's why in ancient times we had this Saturnalia for the Romans, the big party where everybody celebrated the cornucopia of the year, of all the harvest and everything else. They had done their work. Now they had the harvest. They had basically hopefully a full grain silo or something like that, and they could celebrate. After hard work, it was time to celebrate. That's also part of Saturn.
Okay. But let's look at it in terms of Joan. So we know in
Yeah.
Joan's life around this time, she was entering her second Saturn return. But in her general life, as we're looking at that, we notice that she's aging out of Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
She's having that contention with Christina because she still wants to be able to control Christina, but Christina's coming into her own person.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of Joan Saturn return, especially because she's in her later years, that would look like if she was doing her life in a way where Saturn can reward, then maybe she would have had a more rewarding experience while as Christina grew up. However, she was a little more on the controlling side of Saturn, still trying to establish her authority. Do we still have her birth chart?
Who's?
Jones.
We do have Joan and Christina.
Let's take a look at that.
Yeah, we do. Unfortunately, I don't have the other one.
Okay, that's fine. But if we're looking at where yeah, okay. So if we're looking at just kind of like where they were when they first were around, you can already tell that looking where I believe what the inside is Joan and the outside is Christina, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. So Joan and Christina, like looking at Joan's Mars is near Christina's Saturn, which are near Pike or in I can't get my words together.
That's okay.
Mercury.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a funny story that we also need to get into real quick
Yeah,
once
let's
we're
go.
done with your train of thought. So please finish that.
Oh, what I was gonna say, because Mercury, oh not Mercury, dang, Saturn and Mars are both malefics, right?
Hmm.
Saturn likes to kind of establish either that control or that distance, keep somebody either far away or close to them. Mars is one of those that has to sever and move, right? So I think with Christina, that severing and moving that she naturally wants to do, she wants to break out and do her own thing in whatever part of life that falls in, versus Joan, who also has her Saturn in that area next to Christina's Mars, is like, no, I want to be able to do this how I want to, because that's a Saturn and Aries. Saturn and Aries is still very much about me, but I want to be in control versus I
Right.
want to break free.
Well, how do you think that Joan is experiencing her Saturn being in Pisces?
With Joan Saturn being Pisces, now that's the interesting part for me. I think with Joan's Saturn in Pisces is more of it feels like it's more of a dreamy control, or maybe she dreams of things or imagines things of how she wants it to go.
But wouldn't it be, I mean, playing devil's advocate here, when we talk about something that you would want to look into giving structure to. And here we have Saturn in Pisces, and we talked about this. The inner wheel is Joan, right?
Okay.
We don't know the birth time, so we need to reiterate that real quick here.
Yes, we
So we
don't have
don't know
official
the
birth
birth time.
times.
Exactly. So what we have here is the 12 o'clock. But we said in our last show that the inner wheel showing, again, Joan's natal chart based on a 12 o'clock where she was born would give her the 20, well, would give her that Pisces um, MC, which would fit actually to an actress. And then, of course, if you have Saturn in Pisces as well, Saturn gives structure. So that would be somebody who actually, would also, by the way, Saturn and Capricorn often comes up with music. So you need to have the discipline to apply yourself to, for example, you don't just play an instrument and do it out of nothing. You have to have many years of training. You have to do a lot of,
You have to be disciplined in it.
repetition. You have to have discipline and all that. So becoming a good actress means you have to apply discipline to the acting, and acting means taking on different roles, which fits, Pisces to a T,
Yeah,
literally.
because Pisces are boundless. So they can
Exactly.
be anything and everything they want to be if they really
Yeah,
put their mind to it.
exactly. And I always, to a degree, thought that it's a little bit as far as Mars. Mars is the energy that says, I want to do this, I want to do that, right? It's kind of like the egocentric. It doesn't really pay attention to what other people want. And talking about the energy. And Saturn, on the other hand, is the planet that takes responsibility for everybody else. And I think that is one of the things that where they actually crash and collide, because one says, you know what, you need to be responsible for everybody here. And the Mars says, well,
Nah,
I
we
don't
ain't
care
doing
about
that.
anyone else. It's all about me.
Yes.
So and that's why I always thought it's kind of curious that Mars is actually exalted in Capricorn. But then again, it's exalted probably because in Capricorn, we do have the sign that makes it apply its energy to being constructive for the greater good, right? But that's a little bit outside of the scope that we have right now. So going back to these two ladies, they're on our stage, and you know what? They are just about blowing a casket again. What the hell is
Yes.
going on between the two? Why are they so furious? Did Joan say something again? Did she take a little side swipe at her
Yeah, did she
daughter?
try to take a side swipe at Christina, and
Yeah.
Christina finally got tired of it?
Yeah. Is she rolling with her eyes again, going like, oh my God, here we go again,
He's about to fight her over those wire hangers again.
Yeah. I mean, you have to keep in mind that here, good old Joan, she is an Aries after all, So I don't know. We don't know exactly what has been going on between those two, but I would say, talking about crisis situations, and bringing it into the scope of actually we want to roll on to the Saturn and Uranus phenomenon.
Yeah.
And by the
So,
way,
like, go
just
ahead.
real quick, so our two ladies on Monday, our moonlit muses, Capricorn made them a little sleepy yesterday, so they didn't realize that they didn't do a live stream. They did a recording. So their show actually was done, but nobody realized it. Nobody had access to it. And now it is uploaded to the YouTube channel of Astromachistas. So if you want to listen to them, please go ahead. They did do their job. They were not lazy, but they did forget to press the button where it say go live. Well, actually, they did press the button. They did not connect it to any streaming platform, and then it turned out to be a recording. So that was what happened. But on top of that, their story is also Saturn and Uranus, and they are also talking about kind of like what we're talking about today. But I think we do have a little bit of a different spin to it. But what is important, and we talked about this briefly in a briefing before our talk show today. We also have to, most people are not aware of the Greek mythology that is behind all of this and where some of these um, like associations come from, right? And we ended last time actually on the questions like, how does Saturn really become the ruler, the traditional ruler of Aquarius? Because it just seems to be such a different concept, and Uranus very much fits that. And then again, you go like, well, this is kind of strange too, because Saturn was the son of Uranus in Greek mythology. Saturn
Mhm.
actually is the one that rebelled against his father, not the other way around. And Saturn was the one who severed the genitals of his father, out of which then they fell into the ocean near Cyprus, and out of which Aphrodite, i.e., Venus, was born. So now that story is almost like the exact opposite, right? You would think that Uranus is the rebel because that's how we learned it, and Saturn would be the one who needs to be chastised and kicked out of and all that. But it was exactly the other way around.
Well, it gets into another different thing that we think about too, like not Uranus. Saturn rebelled against Uranus. Jupiter rebelled against Saturn. So
Correctly,
there is
yes,
that generational. We could call it generational rebellion or generational trauma,
yep,
depending on how
yep,
you look at it. But since we're going to roll into Saturn versus Uranus for the ruler of Aquarius, that's something we can also talk about. So a lot of times, if you are studying traditional astrology, you recognize that Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius.
correct.
But a lot of modern astrologers, especially like us new baby astrologers, as we come in, we're used to saying that Uranus rules Aquarius, not Saturn. And a lot of people can't understand why. A big reason for that is because to make the study of astrology a little more easier, we put a lot of the qualities of Uranus onto Aquarius versus looking at it as the masculine form of Saturn. Because if you're going into your traditional astrology study, you realize that outside of the luminaries, which are the sun and the moon, that all the other visible planets have a masculine and a feminine side. You see this, and this is why everybody has the questions. Well, how come Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are these, but all these other planets have two signs? That's because Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto were not taken account of in the original way that we looked at astrology.
Exactly. Yep. And as we see, actually, those planets are missing in the two charts that we compare in
Mm-hmm.
our picture right now, right?
Yeah. Yes. We didn't
So,
want to
but
like muddy it up too much. So it's like, let's look at just the visible planets like we would if we were doing a
exactly,
traditional astrology
yes.
reading.
And you were actually also kind enough to put together this chart where we're talking about the
Yes.
Saturn return one more time. Before you get into this chart, I would also like to point something else out because, again, we're the blast from the past. We're looking at it from the perspective of like, okay, we do have our two people here on the stage. And it would have been, now that you mentioned that this is actually like going from Jupiter to Saturn to Uranus, it would have been interesting to see what kind of relationship good old Joan had with her mother.
Oh, we might have to do that in a future date.
If we have any information on that, I don't know if we do, but
Yeah.
the question is there something going on in that family where, and it doesn't have to be biological, by the way, but families kind of tend to go through stories from one generation to the next generation,
They
right?
do. You can see
And
that generational either trauma or whatever else will all
exactly, and
show up in the chart.
then you wonder, do we have something that we could align with? So let's get the grandmother on stage, like Christina's grandmother on stage. Let's see what's going on here. Did she still live? If she didn't live, what
Well,
would
that's the
Joan?
question we gotta think about it, because remember Christina
Yeah,
was adopted, so we would have to look at
exactly.
Joan's mother.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to look at Joan's mother. And we don't know. I don't think that Joan really ever talked much about her
I
upbringing
don't
or
think
her
she did
young years.
either.
No. So her parents, particularly her mother, did not exist. So it was, yeah, we're a little bit in the dark here. But in the spirit of the talk show, I would say, if somebody says, hey, you know what, we do have this generational issue going on, and funny as it is, often the grandchild and the grandmother, or the grandparents and the grandchildren, get along just fine, and it's the one in between that's basically getting chipped away on from both sides.
Yep.
It's like the children and the parents are basically like, well, why are you treating your child like that, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
And then the children like, oh, you're doing something, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, I think that has to do. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a generational thing, And you look at it and you go like, well, usually a generation is actually a Saturn return, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So maybe that is also related to that. And like we said before, between that and 21 years would be the waxing Uranus to Uranus. So Uranus to its own natal placement would be the first quarter um, square, right? So the
Yep.
waxing square for Uranus. So we have this like dynamic going on between this is like, yeah, your children are becoming independent. That's one of the things. 21 years old. Usually that's when children become independent of the parents, right? So they move
Mm-hmm.
out. So there's some stuff going on. Parents don't want to let go. Children want to be independent. It's are the parents, at this moment ready for this, right? What
And sometimes they're not, and that's
what
why everybody's fighting.
Exactly. So again, we're talking about now family dynamics, and you'd say, well, yeah, now we're going from the personal to the family dynamic. Yes, because we're on stage here. This is Jerry Springer, and we want to look at the dynamic that's going on. And by the way, the astrologers do the same thing. If you
Mhm.
start, with your natal chart, that's great. You understand yourself better. But often the things that we don't want to just look at it from the astrological perspective, because obviously we all grew up in a social environment. So
Mhm.
naturally the family we grew up in does play a part. So if you say, you know what, one of the biggest issues I have is what my family upbringing did to me and how it programmed me in my early years, then it would be actually good to do the synastry and look at, the synastry means that you look at the relationship between people and see what dynamics are playing in there. And that can also clarify a lot. So again, we do have quite a few people on the website that are actually trained psychologically and astrologically for these kinds of situations. So I implore everybody, if you really want to get down to it, astrology is the fastest way to do it. There's
Mhm.
nothing, even the best psychologist does not have the fast track that astrology does.
And the other thing too is, if you're going to ask those type of questions, be prepared for the answer.
That's a very important
And
thing.
a
Yes.
lot, that's a very big thing. And sometimes that we astrologers can pull up something that people might have never considered, or they may not be prepared to discuss. So if you're going to go down that route, just make sure you're ready for what we're going to dig up.
You know what? That's another very, very, very valuable point that you bring up here, because there's again different approaches in astrology to things, and for the last 20 to 30 years, I would say the approach was dominant, where oh, we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want to upset anybody, we want everybody to be happy and feel, like they just hear positive things. Well, of course, there are some negative things that are going on in your life, but let's give it a positive spin. Like
That's
let's
that toxic positivity woo woo.
exactly, and that is that toxic positivity, and this is one of the things that we aim not to do at Astromagistus. So if we have people listening and they say, well, I don't want to hear the negative, this is one of the few times when I say maybe then this is not for you, because our people, we will try to give it a context in which you can work with it and turn it into something positive. But the life that we live does not consist only out of positivity and optimism. We do sometimes have to look at the reality that we live through, the taboos that we dealt with, or maybe we have desires that we can't voice because we think we are going to be judged by everybody that we know. That's another thing that is really important to keep in mind. In this case, yes, in our talk show now, we're saying, oh, well, we're like, Jerry Springer. And then your darkest secrets were put right on stage for everybody to dissect and look at, and you felt completely exposed. Now, that is the exact opposite when you come to the individual astrologer. That is a complete trust situation. No one will know about what you guys talk about. It's the same trust that you have in a doctor and in a psychologist. Nobody, what basically what goes to the astrologer stays with the astrologer and you, no one else.
Yes.
And that's a safe place to discuss things that might, wear heavy on you and your soul.
Yeah. So if we do find bad news, just know we will give it to you in the best way we can, and hopefully give you some ways to work through it, around it, however you want to go. But just don't think that we as the astrologers here at Magistas, that we're just going to give you all good things and not warn you about the bad thing that may be lurking around the corner. But anywho.
Absolutely. So please tell us a little bit about Christina's Saturn return.
Okay, so what we're looking at here on the chart, the inner wheel is Christina's natal chart configuration. The outer wheel is what her planets look like as she goes through her first Saturn return. So this is about 30 years. It's not exactly her birthday, because fun thing that a lot of people don't know is that sometimes your Saturn return, where your natal Saturn and your transiting Saturn actually line up maybe slightly before or after your birthday. So in this case, her Saturn return happened in April. So one thing I thought was actually pretty interesting is that load of planets in that 8th house that's sitting right there with her Saturn.
Just keep in mind you don't have to birth time, though.
Oh yeah, so exactly. So we're not looking at birth times, but in the case, those planets that are sitting there, if we're not counting the moon, because the moon is probably slightly either ahead or behind.
Could be, yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are going on with her. We already know that she's trying to break free of Joan. Her emotions could be high. She could be doubling, trying to establish herself, especially because if you look at where her sun and moon is, natally, she's always wanted to be in the spotlight. However, is she able to do that? There's a lot of tension between those planets, her natal Saturn and her natal Mars as well. So I think she may be wanting to break free. If she break free, she has that drive to do it. But I think there are things that are holding her back. And I think that's where the issue comes in with Joan. What do you say, Jerry?
Well, I mean, while you were saying that, I was thinking something like, I don't know if Joan was, I mean, was she sympathetic in general to, I mean, the other children didn't complain about it, right? It was only Christina.
But Christina was also the oldest.
Of course.
The brother, which was the one that was after Christina, had issues with Joan as well, even though they weren't really discussed. The two girls, the twins, they were born 8 years apart, or 8 years after Christina. So they said they didn't have that issue with their mother. But by then, and I think we talked about it very briefly, Joan may have learned her mistakes dealing with Christina and was a better mother to the twins.
Exactly. Yes. I think that was a very good point. Thank you, audience, for your applause. So what I'm thinking is here, if I were Joan, I would say, you know what? Good for you. I'm happy that you worked it out. Why do you drag me? I mean, I'm here on stage. I'm a star. You make me look like a fool. And everything that you're doing here right now is basically just self-serving, isn't it? You have your Saturn return going on, dearest. Not me. You need to face your own problems. Don't drag me into your, crap.
But I think in that case, Christina would probably say you're just a delusional because you're also going through your second Saturn return. And she would probably state all the ways that Joan did disservice to her, which Joan will probably not admit to.
Well, and they would call each other names, right? So
Yes.
it's like,
And they would go back to fighting because
exactly,
that's just
yeah.
what they do.
Well, you're just an old back. You don't give a shit about any of us. You lived your life, but you don't care that I'm having all these problems. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, again, I have this like these different scenes on mind that in the different shows. I mean, Donahue was a little bit more civilized. Um, Ricky Lake, she kind of tried to get it into like a more, nah. I mean, there were fights with Ricky Lake, but they were not as bad. I think Jerry Springer was pretty much one of the worst breakouts, right?
Jerry and Maury, if you remember
Yeah,
the Maury show. But the
yeah.
other thing too is, look, when you while we're talking about this, if we're looking at it from a 90s talk show standpoint, is that there was a situation where Christina had finally gotten an acting role because she wanted to go into acting,
Hmm.
and she had gotten sick, and Joan went to her managers and said, "Oh, I can do this role," and never told Christina she took that role from her.
Yeah. Well, like that's why I said earlier, family dynamics. I would love to know the kind of situation that she had with her mother. Like, talking about Joan now.
Yeah.
And that would also play into the fact, like, why in God's name did she decide to just adopt rather than having a family with a husband and trying to have children in her own
Yeah.
way? I
Like,
mean, was she afraid of like her beauty, her body would break if she's pregnant, and she would get fat or something like
I
that? Was
think
that the
it had
reason?
to do with the times, because you got to remember, if you are single, you're a single woman and you're trying to have a kid, that
Yeah,
looks really bad, because moral politics are a
I
very
know.
big thing back in the day.
That's what I'm saying. Why didn't she find a husband?
She didn't want a husband. She had the only reason she even got Christina, remember, was because the guy she was dating jumped some hoops to get her a child. But also, if you're pregnant in Hollywood, that probably makes you less desirable. And she
That's my
probably knew
point.
that too, which also
Remember,
goes in with the image of Pisces.
well, absolutely, and remember also, she is an Aries sun. I don't want to say all Aries is. I mean, that all Aries is come in all shapes and forms. So I don't
I'm
want to
about to say,
stereotype.
sir, you better watch your words.
I don't want to stereotype anybody, but there is some people that are Aries that do have their own mind, and they do say, like, okay, this is my thing is more important. So she's like, maybe I do want to be a mother, but I don't want to screw up my career. And she, as you
Hmm.
say, she darn well knew that this was an issue. But then why were the hangers in Mama Dearest so important? Because people always say, well, it was because of I mean, let's call the taboo term of abortions, right?
Mm.
So did she have abortions and something went wrong? And that's why she
Oh,
had to adopt?
because she couldn't give
She
birth
could not,
naturally.
exactly, she could not receive anymore.
Oh, that's a good point, because none of that was talked about in either
Exactly.
the book or the movie,
That's right.
or at least to my knowledge. If you guys have watched the book or read the movie, please put it in the comments. Make sure we're on the right track.
Or have insider knowledge. So maybe that was also happening in her situation, that she, uh, like at an earlier time, was pregnant, did not want to have the child. It was not possible to have an abortion at that time. And again, this is neither here nor there on the philosophical or ethical point at the moment. We're just looking at it from the time and the astrological point of view. And when could that have been, for example, where she would,
Mm.
unwillingly get pregnant and then decide to do this? And again, they used hangers at that time. And I have been told, and I don't know if this is correct or incorrect, but I've been told that scene in the movie where she's completely going off the rails because of the hangers is related to that.
Oh,
Yes.
no wire hangers, and now we know why.
Yeah.
Because I
See,
think the other thing too is, like, and this can go with the whole generational trauma, especially with life as a Hollywood actress back in, like, what, the 20s,
mhm,
is that sometimes your producers and directors were very predatory.
absolutely. That, I mean, not just back then. I mean, I
Well,
just
still
say,
now, but
wasn't there some Weinberg guy like who
hmm
forced people into certain situations just so he
yes,
could have, so it's like,
yeah,
yeah,
a lot of that is predatory behavior, and
exactly.
Hollywood now is not like Hollywood then. Hollywood then,
Yeah,
they had people to make you forget that that even happened.
absolutely. But looking at that again, talking about we go into the raw and the taboo fields. This is a situation that if like you had lived at that time back then and were a woman, particularly an unmarried woman facing the situation of having a child out of wedlock, you would have been ostracized from society. That would
Hmm.
have been a complete psychological breaker. And
Yeah.
those that we have similar situations today where maybe in 80 or 100 years, people will look back and go like, oh my God, I can't believe they were this daft. But, that is society. That is the zeitgeist. That is what we're dealing with. We go from one generation to another generation. Each creates its own little rules. So when you feel you're in a situation that is so hopeless, don't do something rash. Go to
Yes,
somebody
please.
that you can talk with. And again,
Yes.
many astrologers that are really good at what they're doing can help you at least gain an energetic background of what's going on in your life, and may not be able to help you from a psychological or medical point of view, but help you put your mind at rest and give you a context in what it is that you're facing or what you're dealing with, and what you might, if you have the philosophy that life is about what am I here to learn, why do I have to go through this like dark night of the soul. That's again where astrology can help a lot, because it does
Ooh,
give you the background information.
that was something I've needed like probably like 5, 6 years ago. I wish I had been studying astrology back
Yep.
then, because Jesus, that was a dark night of the soul. But side note, we might have to add a trigger warning to this episode. Let's talk about like, whoa, we went kind of dark really quick.
Well,
We
it's
got
the
to
week of
take a note.
Halloween. It's the week of
It,
Halloween. We might
it, it
bring
is
out the
Halloween is in a couple of days. We just talked about some real horror.
exactly
Quick,
like
sorry, post dated trigger warning.
but I mean, again, this is literally, and we will talk about this actually tomorrow within the group of astromagists. That is what
Hmm.
we call ourselves, um, because this is actually what our astrological chart as a company also indicates, that we're here to not shy away from these topics, that we want to be the help in the dark of the soul night. Of course, we don't just want to be tragic drama and everything else around it, but that is part of what we're here to do, to actually allow things to be voiced that otherwise cannot be voiced. And of course, we can go into really deep and dark corners, where people go like, "Oh my God, I have this urge of this, or I have this, I have these I don't know, fetishes. I can't talk to anybody about it. I don't want to be like this. Why am I like this?" And again, you can talk to your astrologer. Maybe it is a taboo topic, and it is shocking to anybody, but how are you going to work through that if you cannot have anybody talk to you about it? That's almost an impossibility, right?
Hmm.
So, and that is actually when we're talking about taboo topics and all that. Let's go back to, and we're veering away a little bit from Saturn and Uranus right now, but we're being in this like Halloween situation where we look at the other world and what's going on, and taboo topics, and
Hmm.
scary things and all that. And when we look at the Greek mythology, I always liken Scorpio to um, the monster in the swamp that Heracles had to kill, the Hydra,
Oh, the
right?
Hydra. Yeah, I see
Yes.
that.
And the Hydra, what a lot of people, I think, only know is that, well, he's trying to kill the thing, and he cuts off the heads, and like out of one head come 10 new ones, something like that, right? And he can't kill. But most people forgot how he's killing it and what that wants to tell us. And actually, Latricia, can you tell us how did in
Oh,
the end how did he actually get to kill the Hydra? Do
I'm
you
trying to
remember?
remember because I was like,
Yeah.
I remember the part where with the Hydra. For those who don't know the story of Hercules, Heracles, however you want to pronounce his name, is that he did some bad things and then he had to go pay for them. We're just going to start there. And one of his trials was to kill the Hydra. The Hydra is this large multi-headed snake, and so every time he would cut a head off, one of the heads of the snake off, like a whole bunch of them would sprout out from that head. So they went from one situation to a very big situation. And I'm trying to remember, Jay, like, didn't he like Is this where the golden fleece kicks in? Do you remember?
It's not a golden. Well, I don't remember the golden fleece in this case.
Or is
I
that a
think
different story?
I think that was Medusa that you're looking at.
Oh, okay, never mind. That's what
But
I'm trying to remember. How did he take that thing? It was like either that or he had to sprinkle some blood or something on it.
well, he severed it from the swamp and he basically put it into the light. And as soon as he put it into the light, it shrank. It became smaller and smaller,
Okay, yeah, that's
and it
different. That's a whole
basically
different story I'm thinking about then.
yes. So, and what happened is, so from the psychological point of view, is you can only kill that monster on a psychological level if you bring to light what it's about. If you talk about it, that is
Oh,
the
so you got
bringing
to
it
bring
to
it to the
light.
surface, essentially.
Exactly, you have to bring it to the surface.
And that's
That's the
never
only way
pretty.
you can kill it.
Yeah.
No?
Okay.
And a lot of people, that is exactly the conundrum that we have. A lot of people constantly face this, like, this is a taboo, you can't talk about this, keep it to yourself, and it festers in your inner, like, underground subconscious chambers. And if there is no outlet, if you have nothing and nowhere to go to with it, then it usually comes out in the most desperate ways.
I'm glad you said it like that, Jay, because if for anybody that's watching and you guys been following me for a while, we call that shadow work. That's essentially what it is you are getting your unofficial dose of shadow work. And in general with shadow work is very much that identifying what is the nature of your shadow, which would be that could be ancestral or familial. It could be as much as you got bullied in high school or middle school about your nose, and now you're very much about, you just want to make sure that your face is perfect, and you might project onto other people that have noses that were similar to you because it reminds you of what your nose used to be. There's a whole bunch of things that happen when we deny and push down our shadow. And so part of shadow work is bringing that to the surface, just like Jay said, and learning how to identify it and either to work with it or how to work through it. I think that's going to be the running theme for a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about in the future, Jay, is if we can't work with it, we got to work through it.
Absolutely. Well, most of the time you do have to work through it. There's just no way. And now we're bringing that back again to our situation. Sometimes maybe a Uranus connection might be the trigger of, like, something happens suddenly to you. That's usually the Uranian, like, keyword, trigger,
Yes.
something that happens all of a sudden, and you get confronted with something that you never reckoned would happen, that is coming from the left side and catches you by surprise, like you wouldn't believe it. And it could be an actual accident, but it can be many different forms. It could be like getting sick all of a sudden. It depends on where Uranus is touching your natal chart. Again, it is visible to any trained astrologer what's going on in your life at any given moment, and they can, with a little bit of analysis and talking with you, can make heads and tails of what's going on. And exactly with the shadow work, I'm thinking again about Saturn forcing you to face realities. And then I'm thinking about, okay, so when Saturn, not only at the crucial points like the Saturn return and maybe the opposition, but when Saturn touches certain parts in the chart, I wonder if that also means you have to look at, like, your family history, you have to look at your shadows, and get clear on that. And if you miss that opportunity, then that it continues. And there's one very interesting part that I learned. I read many different books with astrology, and many are astrological psychology and all that. And one of the things that I read that actually made a huge amount of sense to me is, we have so many people these days with depressions, right?
Oh man.
I mean, it's like at least in the Western world, it's called like an epidemic. Like
Yeah.
half of the population almost is depressed. And I know I'm going to be extremely unpopular with what I'm going to say right now. Probably with half the population.
Oh Lord, choose your words, Jay.
Well, you know what? I have a Mercury Mars conjunction.
He's like, I don't care.
No, not only that, but then also I have a Sagittarius rising, so I'm used to putting my foot in my mouth and then spin on my my axis with that. But usually the funny thing is, even as a child, people always said to me, you know what you said to me was hurtful, the way you said it, But now that a few months, and people don't talk to me for like months, but eventually
Mm.
they come around and go like, but I am grateful that you did it, because what we were saying, it was the truth. And I just needed some time to think about it. But anyways, so what I'm going to say is again, maybe not popular with a lot of people, particularly of the feminine kind, but
Uh-oh.
we are having for many, 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 many years now this extreme focus on feminism and everything feminism, everything female. And I have no problem with that in general. I think everybody, it doesn't matter throughout the board, skin color, male, female, whatever, everybody should have the same opportunities. That's my
Mm.
opinion. I want to say that right now. But if you suppress one in favor of the other, eventually there's a problem. And what I read, that's why I'm saying it like this. What I read is, and I think it was Liz Green, but don't hold me to it,
Mm-hmm.
is that usually depression is a suppressed Mars. So, in
Mm.
other words, Mars needs to be able to, and that's in women and men. I would like to say that very clearly. Okay. So, everybody has a Mars in their chart, everybody
Mm.
has masculine and feminine energies in their setup. But because being so Mars, let's do some keywords around Mars. Competition.
Before we do that,
Yes, do that.
one thing I think people we gotta understand, especially when it comes to astro talk and astro terminology,
Yes.
is that when we say masculine and feminine, we're not just meaning masculine means man and
No.
feminine means woman. We're saying that masculine is direct energy, it's out, it's
Correct.
in the surface. Feminine energy tends to be more internal
Indirect.
and
And
then
also harmony driven,
and
more
attracting.
exactly, more diplomatic. I mean, it's kind of like Mars versus Venus again, when we look
Yes.
at that. So, but the
And the
Mars
gender
energy,
roles came from that. The gender
exactly.
roles came from that. So just keep that in mind as we listen to what Jade's about to say. If
Exactly.
you're
Thank
over
you.
here,
Thank
over
you
here,
for
whatever.
clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the idea was that because the Mars energy has been suppressed in many different fields of our society, because it was all put into the taboo area. You're not allowed to be competitive because then you're better than someone else. You're not allowed to be this because that. So this energy was basically pushed into a corner and locked away in many different contexts. So, but Mars needs, like all the planets, needs to be able to express in a healthy way. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
focus on in a healthy way. So, for example, competition in sports. So that is why the Greeks, actually the ancient antique Greeks, decided we're going to do the Olympics, because it helped putting that Mars energy into sports competition, so you don't have to kill each other and that kind of stuff. It's basically like a friendly way of seeing who would win,
In
right?
theory.
Without anybody killing. So, and we do have quite a few different other examples of that, but now even that has been taken away. Well, why would you want to win? If you're a winner, you're bad. You try to be better than everybody
Yeah, you
else.
make everyone else look bad.
Exactly. So competition is bad. You go to school, you don't want to be the best in whatever, because now you just try to be the the teacher's pet. All these different things. Everything that is competition or trying to show where you're good and everything has been put in place of, no, we all have to be the same. We all have to be happy. If one is better than the other, then we're doing something that's not good. You're making the one that's not as good as you bad, which is also bad for the others. But because you know what, every single one of us has something where they're better at than
Mm-hmm.
others. It's called a talent.
Yes. And if you squash your talent, that can also grow your shadow.
It grows your shadow and your depression.
Mm-hmm.
So that energy, that Mars energy, yes, when it comes out as being constantly, aggressive and cutting everybody down, egocentric and all that, that's the negative way of expressing it. But it does have to have a way of expressing it. And that's what this was about. So with a society that more and more suppresses one energy, it doesn't matter which energy, you start getting these dysfunctions and dysfunctional
Mm-hmm.
societies, because all energies need to be able to be expressed in a healthy way. And again, that then basically led to, when we look at the way how depressions have increased over the years, it is because most of the time it's a Mars that the person does not allow their Mars energy to come through. And again, it doesn't matter if it's male or female, it's for both.
But the other thing to think about with Mars, since we're on the subject of Mars, is everybody always focuses, like you said, on the negative aspects of Mars, but nobody
Yes.
actually focuses on your
The
positive
positive
aspects of Mars.
survival.
That's your survival, that's your
Yes.
courageousness, that's your drive, that's your
Exactly.
passion, and to
Yeah.
an extent, that's your ambition. If you don't have Mars, you don't have the energy to do anything. So that kind of goes into what you're saying is why everybody has a depressed Mars. So even if we're
Exactly.
not looking at it from like, everybody's sad because they don't have anywhere to place their energy in a positive light. You just got to remember you have to find what your passionate is. And if you're not sure about that, book a reading with somebody. We will show you your Mars is here. You probably do you like to do X, Y, and Z based on where it is in the house and the aspects that are connected to it. But the thing is that also you just have to remember that a lot of these aspects have masculine and feminine qualities. Same with Mars, same with Saturn, same with Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Venus,
They all
Moon,
do.
whatever, the sun. Bringing that home, because good Lord, we only have 10 minutes left.
Exactly. And now speaking about bringing the bacon home, now I want to go back to our like larger picture that we have at the moment in the United States, the Zipley chart, and the fact that we have what is the MC in the Zipley chart of the United States. I mean, actually, the one that I'm thinking of is at the end of Virgo. Okay, we do have a
Made me look this up. Hold on.
Yeah, we have a Sagittarius ascendant, and we do have in some charts for some reason the earlier charts I saw. It was always at the end of Virgo. Nowadays, for some reason, and I don't know if there's this effect that there is where you remember something one way and you cannot find any proof of it anymore. So I feel in this situation, I feel like I'm in that situation, but nowadays more often we have in the charts that they show for the US the MC at the early degrees of Libra. But when I started astrology, I swear, and I have a graphic memory, that it was actually at the last degrees of Virgo, because that's where my sun is, and that's one of the reasons why I can remember that so well. And
because I see two of them, and one of them has Libra. The one I'm looking at now has it in Virgo.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So let's talk about the one in Virgo. Okay. And you have actually another thing there, which is Neptune is conjunct that MC. Can you say Rex to Ridges as a dream? The Hollywood movies, dream.
Yeah, because music. Neptune, do you remember Neptune in Virgo? Because I'm looking at Neptune in Virgo.
Well, Neptune in Virgo is exactly that, Rex to Riches. Yeah. Rex to Riches. It's the dream of being Cinderella and turning into this like beautiful princess.
Yeah.
It can't be more descriptive than that.
Yeah.
And that is the dream. That is the American dream. This is the country America, and the MC is the dream. That's what you try to achieve. So you want to go from Rex to Riches. Mm-hmm. And hopefully in a way, I mean, it was Virgo usually is hard work. So you apply yourself in hard work. Remember the dishwasher kind of like thing? You're starting as a dishwasher, become a tycoon.
Oh, what you call it? Coming to America. You start out on fries.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but what do we have in the opposition to that?
To Virgo?
Well, to the Virgo MC right now.
To the Virgo MC in opposition is Chiron and Aries.
Well, that's in the birth chart. I'm talking about the transits right now.
Oh, the transits right now. Oh man, you got to give me that part. You got to tell me that part first. Well, yeah. So I can have that. I had that chart ready.
You got to be thinking on your feet when you're talking to
me. I was not prepared. I didn't think I was going to need my phone like right away to look up stuff.
Trisha, put on your jumping shoes.
Hold on. All right, let's look at the transit chart. So what is in?
We have Saturn opposition. We have Saturn at the IC, right?
I'm looking at the wrong chart. You're looking at the U.S. Sibley chart for right now.
I'm looking at the U.S. Sibley chart when it was established as a country. Then that's the birth chart of the U.S. with the Virgo MC. But
you're looking at it for the opposition of where is Saturn right now?
No, Saturn right now is at the end of Pisces.
Yes,
it's at the opposition point to the. Well, so what we have is a Neptune opposition to itself, because Neptune is at the end of Virgo in the U.S. chart. So So Neptune was just basically, we're kind of like moving out of that now. But the last few years, Neptune was in opposition to Neptune, to the natal Neptune. But now, but
Oh,
now Saturn also joined in the opposition to the MC and to that Neptune. So what does Saturn do? Hey, girlfriend, wake up, stop dreaming.
it's the harsh reality.
Yeah, let's put in reality a little bit. And the Saturn in the U.S. natal chart is in Libra in the 11th house. That is groups, systems, and
Mm-hmm.
so on. Saturn in Libra is exalted, so it knows what it's doing. So whenever we look at the mundane chart, and actually also the natal chart, you always have to keep in mind when you do the transits, what is the energy that this planet actually carries in the natal chart. And that
Okay.
is what you were going to look at. Even though Saturn is in late Pisces at the moment, being retrograde at that, it does carry in its for the United States, in its original sense, it does carry the Saturn in Libra in it. And Saturn in Libra tries to find an equilibrium. It does try to find a way that everything is in balance and
And it works
works
hard to keep it that
and
way.
exactly works hard to keep it that way. And if something is skewed, it tries to get back to the balance. And here we
Mm-hmm.
have maybe the spending is a little bit out of balance. May that be true? Because what does Saturn rule in that chart? The second house. And what is the second house? Money.
Money
Ding, ding,
and
ding, ding, ding.
resources.
So this is what you need to look at as far as the country goes. So it needs to do what? Save. It needs to start saving money, and Saturn is known for restricting. So what do we
Mm-hmm.
have? We have the government. The Saturn Libra is the government. The government is now restricting the money.
Mm-hmm.
So that ends the dream of a lot of people. And also, by the way, the dream of the people rags to riches, the dream of the immigrants that came here that are sent back to their home countries. Realize that? How that also plays into that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to also figure in that this Neptune actually rules the IC in modern astrology.
Technology. Yeah.
So back
It's a
to the
lot going
homeland, right?
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot going on, exactly.
Party's over.
So it's kind of like the party's over, and I mean we're having this energy going on, and yes, we're almost at the end. But just to look at, last time we talked about this, we have to keep in mind as astrologers, and again, this is true for your natal chart as well as for a city, for establishing a business, whatnot. We always have to like zoom in and zoom out. There is the microscopic and there's the macroscopic. That's always both. There's an interplay. We cannot separate one from the other. Sometimes some astrologers are a little bit too far in one or the other field, so it's kind of like you don't see the trees for the forest and the other way around.
Mm.
But you have to be able to combine it. When you look at the fact that we do have the situation going on with the Neptune-Saturn conjunction at 0 degree Aries, maybe you can tell our listeners for a moment, what is the 0 degree Aries point in astrology in general?
The 0 degrees Aries point is 0, right?
Well, yeah, but it's a very specific or very special point in astrology, 0 degree Aries. Do you know
And then
what it
like
is?
the vernal not the vernal equinox.
Well, it is the vernal equinox, yes.
Oh, okay.
But it's also the beginning of everything. So when we look at the chart, this is the new beginning of new everything. So basically, it's
New
like
world
the
order.
whole universe sets itself to this is the beginning at 0 degree Aries. Okay,
Mm.
so having a Saturn Neptune conjunction, which happens every roughly 30 years.
Is it 30
Um,
years?
well, 35 years actually, because the
Mm.
last time it was in 89, 90. That's when we saw the communism crumble. So,
Oh, yeah.
so every time we have a Saturn Neptune conjunction, systems crumble. Now we have Neptune dissolving the existing structures, dreaming about the new things, and then the Saturn energy makes the new things gaining structure again. So we're basically undergoing a complete reinvention of human society at the moment at 0 degree Aries.
I'm glad you said that because real quick, because this is also a contention with Uranus in Aquarius. So a lot of times we tend to think that Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius because of the qualities that they put into it. But here's the thing, is that a lot of the real qualities of Aquarius require discipline,
Yep.
limitation, and control. those are Saturnian
Sat-
qualities.
yes.
They're not Uranian qualities, because out of that control that you are trying to build, you sometimes get chaos, and that's where Uranus comes in.
Well, also another term of Saturn, by the way, in a negative sense, is when you have, and see, now that I want to say it, I'm losing the term. You know, when everything becomes encrusted and you can't move anymore. What's the term for that again?
Like crystallization.
Well, no, that's the chemical term, but you know, there's another term for that. It starts with an I. I can't remember it right now. Inertia.
Like when you
Inertia.
lose inertia.
Yeah. Well, no, it's like you're building inertia because Saturn likes to, when you have a Saturn system, it basically becomes more and more tight. It does not like changes. It doesn't like to have any kind of modifications made to it. Uranus would be a modification, like, you know, going with the flow of the time. Saturn does not go with the flow. It wants to have its system and keep that system. And that's inertia. You create inertia. If you are in the pure Saturn energy, then nothing happens. Then you need chaos, and out of chaos comes what? Order. So
And
we
that's
constantly
Saturnian.
have this, and that is the order. This is basically Saturn, Neptune interplay. Chaos, order, back to chaos, back to order. But every time adjusted to the new kind of energy. Every time, like the whole universe is like music, and every cycle is not the same thing. It kind of rhymes, as it says. You know, history rhymes. It doesn't repeat. So we look at similar situations, but in a different quality, if you want. So we're right now at the zero, and then the zero is like a Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 degree Aries. Does not happen very often. You can enter that into your little chat GPT and ask it, when do we have this? You'll find out it's thousands of years apart.
Even that, or look at it in your ephemeris.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you will not find it in ephemeris because it's, like I said, thousands of years apart. Like the next, in 35 years from now, it will be in a completely different place, and it will not get back to 0 degree Aries in like forever. But the point is that we have that right now. And that basically means that the whole human society, not this time, not just one or the other, but all of human society is basically disassembling what it used to have as systems, and needs to reconfigure how it wants to work, how it can work. Because again, Saturn always also deals with reality. We have to live with the reality that we have, limited resources, for example, that we can only live in certain ways, and readjust to that. And that is basically what's going on right now, which is so discombobulating to many people, disorienting to many people, etc., etc. And we're 3 minutes over time already.
That's okay. We made it. And we're going to go ahead and slide it out, everybody. Thank you for listening and hanging with us. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it into the chat. We'll have the recording up very shortly. If you want to reach out to us for a reading, you can always check us out on astromagistus.com. Jay, any last words from you?
Oh, I never have last words. I can go on forever.
Well, I will take the last words, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And also stay tuned for our next talk, which will be at 3 p.m. next Tuesday. So 3 p.m. EST.
Actually, no. It was only 3. No, the confusion with me today, we have to say this real quick. We should have been at 2 p.m. I was confused, but the confusion is because my clock is on European time. They had their time change this past week,
and our time changes next week.
It's in the coming weekend. So I got confused with the time, because in the computer system, which is then again American, and it's for the East Coast PM. So I'm dealing with me being in Central. Latricia is in East Coast. Then I see the European sign displayed on my computer, and I'm trying to figure all the thing out with this 1 week of having 1 hour time difference now.
Oh, gotcha.
So
okay,
that's
so
how I got confused. It's 2 p.m.
2 p.m. EST.
East Coast.
Next week.
2 p.m. Absolutely.
Next week.
And
be
look
there
on the
or
website.
be flat.
Exactly.
Yes.
And look on the website for the topic, because we're still debating on what we're going to do next. But I think we always have a topic. We do stick to our little, idea of the blast from the past, looking at what drama would we have seen on stage. And with those words, I thank everybody for having the patience to listen to us all this long. I hope it was entertaining. And sorry that we missed our live stream and we were a little bit like an hour delayed, but it is going to be there until posterity. So what do we care?
It'll be there until the next Aries point.
Exactly. You can listen to us 10,000 years from now if you find this.
Exactly.
So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Latricia.
All right.
It was
Thank you,
entertaining
James.
as always. And see you
We will
next
see you
week.
next time.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye.